to Smokin with Swami. I'm Swami Chaitanya.
Nikki Listretto, and our guest today is Jude Thilman, a wonderful friend and a brilliant woman who's been very active in the promotion of cannabis medically. And you tell us, Jude.
Well, ever since I retired and came to Mendocino back in, I started coming here in the late 80s, but in 2003, and started a dispensary in 2011 with a group of women who were acupuncturists and massage therapists and Bowen therapists and lymphatic drainage and lavender oil makers and everything that's beautiful and wonderful about Mendocino County and constitutes the heart and soul of what this culture is about. Ever since we got together in 2011 to try to create a dispensary, and we said we will not ignore the oldest and most healing herb on the planet, which is cannabis. Cannabis has been around for 5,000 years. We have written records of the Egyptian pharaohs and Chinese emperors.
I say 10,000 years at least.
You can say 10,000. I'd say 20. But
20,
dinosaurs were using
prior to
immemorial.
the Ice Age. It's the original medicine.
It's the original medicine.
It's probably been here longer than we have.
Yeah. So we went around trying to start a dispensary, and every landlord that we talked to said, well, if you have all those other herbs, the lavender and the Chinese herbs, and all those modalities of treating, which we see all as part of holistic healing, you have to have everything, because traditionally, shamans and witch doctors, and they did everything. They did hands-on, and they did singing, and they did dancing, and they did nutrition, and all of it together.
Yeah.
They said, if you just drop the cannabis out, we'll rent to you. No, we weren't going to do that. So we stuck to it, and we decided we would actually pay extra for the real estate to have enough room to have classes and patient treatment center rooms and everything besides just a hole-in-the-wall dispensary. So whenever somebody walks into Dragonfly Wellness Center on the coast just below Fort Bragg, just above Mendocino Village, when anybody new walks in, I say, look, we are not your mom's old-fashioned pot club. We are not your uncle's old-fashioned dispensary.
I don't know you smoke, do you?
No, I don't.
No, but Nikki will smoke.
I would just cough for the next 20 minutes.
All right.
if I smoked.
But now with Swami Select. But anyway, carry on.
We'll talk about that later.
Now we're back at Dragonfly.
Yeah. So I always tell everybody who walks in, we're not a standard dispensary or pot club. We're a wellness center because we integrate cannabis medicine with all the other modalities and herbs that are necessary. And I have classes once a month, and now I've become part of a consortium, an umbrella of people who actually take medicinal cannabis education seriously, called True Pharma, and they distribute my holistic, potent, and pure medicines, Bhutan tinctures,
Wonderful
topicals, all oils throughout the state, and I spend huge numbers of hours either doing public presentations to the Kiwanis, the Rotary last week. I did the Chamber of Commerce, or doctors and nurses.
Yeah, really.
I just went, or I'm spending hours doing individual patient counseling. So if you look at like all of the regulations in 29 states across the country for medicinal cannabis, have any of them set aside resources to do medicinal cannabis education? No. So those of us who are sort of picking it up, I'm actually writing a letter to the cannabis community of Mendocino and actually the whole triangle saying, tithe $20 a month, just $20 a month toward education.
Yes.
It's going to hurt us so much if our patients and the public are not educated, because they're going to, especially when you're talking about craft, high-end cannabis and appellations. And pure cannabis, right, that's not seeds tossed into dirt down south in the Salinas Valley or in Kentucky that had previous crops.
Right.
Those previous crops had chemical pesticides, chemical nutrients that are still in the dirt. We are talking about changing our body's chemistry on a cellular level. So we can't have those.
And cannabis has an amazing factor of pulling up all those things out of the soil. They even use it to purify certain land in places.
So when I do my presentation,
what's in the soil will end up in your cannabis.
That's the first thing I say. So there's 5 rules for patients to pick their medicine. The first one is just what you just said. It's exactly right, Swami. Know your medicine, know your strains, know what kind of ground it came out of, know the grower, know if it's organic, biodynamic, non-GMO, all of those kinds of things. You don't want hemp-based. Hemp is great for building materials and rope and clothing, but it is not. It doesn't give you the full complement.
So they extract out of the regular hemp these things and try and concentrate them. But when you have medicinal flowers, they're concentrated, and you can grow strains to isolate or emphasize
terpene expression,
exactly.
Or CBN, CBGs. Now, if you looked at of the 113 known cannabinoids that we know of, if you look at a pie chart, most of the like CBN, CBGs are little tiny slivers of pie, but a little little over half that pie chart is divided between CBD and THC. So those are the ones we pay closest attention to, and I'll get to that in a second. But you're also looking at terpene and flavonoid expression.
Right.
We are a long way from operationalize what we know from all the scientific research by
Right.
people like the cannabis clinicians.
No, we're still hung up as indica sativa, which is basically
which is
meaningless.
obsolete.
Right? The only thing that's really
Obsolete.
telling you much about what it's going to do when you ingest it, however you ingest it, is the cannabinoid profile, the terpene profile, and the other one you just mentioned? The flavonoids, the
Yay!
latest frontier of
Right.
cannabis.
But that's just number one, because I'm going to say now
right.
something
I
you
wanna
probably
hear
don't
2,
agree
3, 4,
with.
and 5.
Yeah, you
Okay.
probably won't agree with
Great.
this. Number 2 is delivery system. Smoke is not the most effective delivery system for getting cannabinoids matching up with your endocannabinoid receptors, neurotransmitters, and cells. No, but it's wonderful for symptom management, pain, nausea, sleep, relaxation.
But that's knowing. We got to know that stuff,
Yeah,
right?
we
So
gotta
what's
know
the
that
best
stuff.
way to ingest to get
I'm not done.
All right.
Edibles, worse than smoke. Edibles, how do you find what part of that juice or that brownie, where is the medicine in it? How do you self-titrate?
And what ratio,
Right.
what proportions?
How do you do ratio? How do you do dosing? It's
Right.
really hard. But more than that, edibles, as soon as you swallow them, they go into your stomach and they degrade by about 30%. Read O'Shaughnessy's, which is
Right.
the journal of
Great.
cannabis clinicians. They
Great
degrade by
journal.
30, and then after they leave the stomach, they go through your bowels, and there's all these digestive enzymes that degrade it further. So what we need to do
And the
is
liver
get more.
throws in there as well.
Exactly. So we need to get the cannabinoids more directly into our bloodstream so that as they float by, just like the lymph system knows what to pull out of the bloodstream to detoxify your liver and kidney, the endocannabinoids know what to pull out of the bloodstream to go and return homeostasis, balance to your system. That's the function of the endocannabinoid system, which wasn't discovered
They're
until
so smart. These
1992.
endocannabinoids
It's in
are
the
brilliant.
RNA.
They're feedback.
Yeah,
They're the
right,
feedback loop.
Right. So if
So-
you have
so what
cancer
is
or
the way?
diabetes, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Diabetes, cancer, any of those things, that's your imbalance, and the endocannabinoids have to go redress and make you balanced again. So you've got delivery systems. The best delivery systems are through the membrane of the mouth, the oral mucosa. So whether it's a sucker that you're going to suck on or something you'll melt in your mouth, but most importantly, tinctures that you swish before you swallow a tincture.
Right under your tongue.
No,
is-
not under
oh,
the
not
no.
under. Wait.
Under the tongue is the old naturopathic.
Old
those little
fashioned.
white
Don't do
sugar-
it that way. On
It's too
top of your
tender.
tongue.
So
It's too-
much here.
It's
Yeah,
too
you're right about that.
tender.
I
It's
can't
too
hold
tender.
it. Okay, so
No.
on the tongue.
It is
Yeah,
too
because
tender.
all
This
you're
is
gonna
very
do-
important now. On the tongue, not under the
So
tongue.
this is
But it's
whether
not
it's
just on the
oil-based,
tongue.
alcohol-based,
I'm getting to oil
glycerin-based.
problems. Hold on.
Okay,
You
okay.
put it on the tongue. Just be patient. This is like it's
She's
so
got
exciting.
so much information here. Just okay. We're in the flow here.
This
Now
is
let's
fun.
go.
This is fun. So you put it, but you're not going to let it sit on the tongue anyway. You're going to be swishing it around. But there's no reason to put it under the tongue. Those are those old naturopathic
Yeah.
sugar
Okay,
pills
right,
we were
right,
trained
right.
on. Okay, on the tongue, you swish, 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 swish as long as you can before swallowing it. Once you swallow it, it's an edible. It starts to degrade in the stomach, the digestive system, blah, blah, blah. The second best way, if you're a baby or you're an old person, if you've got a mouth or throat problems, is suppositories. Because that will go through the membrane,
Sure,
very quickly
sure.
into the bloodstream.
Wait,
So,
wait, anal suppository? Or
yeah!
whoa,
Whoa!
this is new stuff. No, I know about anal suppositories. Our friends Jude and Lucinda were making them for a friend
Yes.
for treating for cancer.
Exactly,
Right. But there are
exactly.
still some technical problems with.
Right.
But
you
anyway, so
can
that's a
take 'em
great
just
way
as
to
a regular
absorb.
way to
Goes
absorb
right
as
into the
well.
bloodstream. You're
Right,
saying.
right. So that's number. So we've got know your medicine, where it comes from. Know about
Delivery
systems. Now these two are dosing and ratios. Let's get ratios first.
Okay.
So what we're learning, and we're still so far behind from what we know scientifically than what we're practicing. We've got to make the operational, and this is the other hat that I wear, which is trying to bring manufacturers and cultivators together with the healthcare providers, the doctors, the researchers. Let's get that
There's
going.
a lot of science we need to exchange. A lot of
and we
information.
got to figure out
Just-
how to operationalize what we understand. We
Right.
now know that there are more than CB1 and CB2 receptors. There's a lot of other receptor sites, and they're different receptor sites.
Right.
So how do we begin to fashion?
Apparently, every one of our major organs has receptors in it for cannabinoids. and
Right,
so-
and how do we begin to make medicine that customizes to that? So, but at any rate, with ratios, what we're working mostly with is experience. So a lot of people, I went to this big, huge, in August of 2014, it was an eye-opener. I went to HempCon at the Cow Palace, and it was like hundreds and hundreds of booths. They had all these bling, fancy-ass, know, bling, what kind of bling they have at these trade shows.
Oh, it's
People
actually,
put a lot of
yeah.
money into it.
Yeah,
Crap.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
highest CBD here.
Yeah.
And I go up to that one, and I look at the bottle, and it's like hemp-based. It's got cornstarch in it, and it's 4-to-1. I
Ah.
go, what? That is not even high. We call high CBD 20-to-1 or better.
Right.
And the reason that we, and 1-to-1 would be more for mood, autism,
But you have to
bipolar.
cultivate for
I
that
see.
20-to-1.
Yes,
as
you
much as you can.
That's right. You have to
So,
cultivate, and we
uh-huh.
test at harvest. We test again when we make the medicines. But
Ah.
now, so ratios. There's a range of ratios of CBD to
Right.
THC, and we're not even close to beginning to figure out the terpene expression, the CBGs, Gs, and Ns, and all those other things.
Right.
Some people, some of the more advanced medicine makers who happen to be here in the whole world, they are here.
In the
but we're
mountains, yeah.
beginning to figure this stuff out. But how we operationalize that on a large scale is going to be
Because really, it's
a big
kind of
challenge.
chance operation, hit or miss. Oh, I think maybe I'll try this inspiration.
Well,
try, and it actually works.
The
but
lucky
why?
thing is I've got 6 years of practice in medicinal cannabis with largely a senior population on the coast. We've got a ton of patients. I make a 16-minute video called Cannabis is Medicine of just patients and scientists talking about how it's worked. So cancer, parents with children with epilepsy, you know, all of the different conditions that it's
Post-traumatic
so
stress
well.
disease,
PTSD, I've got a vet.
concussion,
Yep. Oh,
arthritis.
so you've seen my video? Yes. No.
No,
it's a.
I
I've
will.
got a
I will
vet.
right away. Right after this.
Right
we'll
after-
look at
okay,
your-
good. So anyway, so that's the ratio question. Then the dosing question. We do a 1-2 punch. I have a lot of cancer patients. I've got people. I've got Roger, for example, had pancreatic and lung cancer. He was diagnosed in August of 2015. They said he had 3 to 4 months to live. He said, "I'm not going through that radiation and chemo. It'll kill me," which I personally think that someday in the future we'll look back at this
Say,
era.
what were these people?
It's
You know,
like,
it's
what
like
was
electric
that?
shock
Boll
therapy
weevils.
seems so
Yes!
old-fashioned
I was
now.
like, oh my God,
Right.
you flood your system
Radiating-
with chemotherapy in the hopes that you get the bad guys? I mean, what sense does that make? None. Anyway, Roger was supposed to be long gone, and about a month ago, he taps me on the shoulder at Safeway. He says, well, went to the VA last week, and the 3 forms of cannabis oil and tincture you're giving me, they can't find the lung cancer. They just can't find it. It's not showing. You know, I have patient after
Does
patient
he tell them
after
that he's
patient.
taking it at the VA?
Well, it depends on
tell
who he's
them?
talking to, and
Yeah.
that's also in my video. I've got a 35-year public health nurse who talks about telling her before she went in for wrist surgery, telling them, and they immediately wrote on her chart street drugs, and then they treated her completely different. And then later, after explaining in the weeks following surgery how she took cannabis medicine for pain and talking to her doctor, she said their whole attitude changed once they had the education, once they understood how it works.
And, so we know nurses who are trying to organize kind of surreptitiously, not to lose their license, to promote cannabis education.
Well, here's the thing. Did you know there's a gag order in California? I did a presentation to the Mendocino Cannabis Nurses Association, and you're right, they're getting active. And I just got back from a medical conference in Columbus, Ohio, that was strictly all the big names in cannabis medicine and research. Dustin Sulak, Ethan Rousseau, Jeff Hergenrother, all these folks were there doing presentations to a room full of doctors and nurses who were getting CMEs. CMEs, that's a big deal.
What's that mean?
Continuing medical education
yeah.
credits to go to a cannabis
Wow,
conference in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow.
And I sat at
huge.
this table with these doctors and nurses, and they all looked at me and said, they never told us any of this in medical school. They never told us about the endocannabinoid system. They never told us that over 93% of the cannabinoids in the plant are not psychoactive. THC is, and the only reason THC is because we learned in the 60s and 70s in the subculture as a response to prohibition to jack it up. It was fun. It was inspirational, to use your favorite words. It was music. It went along with sex and drugs and rock and roll. I mean, it was
painting and posters and
all of that,
building
and
houses
jazz
and
and
embroidering
all of that. The
all
whole
your
cultural
a
alternative.
creative culture.
But that's a social expression, just like race is a social category, not a biological one. Getting high off of cannabis is a social construct.
Yes, that's
So
right.
we have to think again. The way we work with cannabis, with THC, when we're doing 1-2 punch dosing regimens for cancer, for example, is microdosing. We microdose THC in every instance.
Really?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
how small is a microdose?
Microdose. Well, when we're using the concentrated oil, you just dip your toothpick in and you put a little dot on the end, not half a grain of rice. That's too big.
No.
dot.
This is what I did when I had my hip replacement.
There you
Jude.
go.
You saved me.
But it's
I
like a
was
catalyst.
praising you all
It's
the
like
time in
it's a
Bhutan
necessary
products.
little extra thing you got to put
It
in.
works
What do they call an
with the
agonist? Is
CBDs.
what
Yes,
they're
it's
talking about now.
Right. Well, the agonist is the chemical reaction of the cannabinoids to the endocannabinoid system. Some of them act as agonists. That's another story, more complicated. But what we have to know, and what all the states that pass these medical laws allowing medical cannabis don't know is you can't isolate. Like you're going to see all these medicines isolates, CBD isolated, THC isolated. No, they work together. It's the entourage effect. The entourage effect is that's why we add in the analgesic THC with the high CBD, which eliminates the inflammation that causes it.
So
I got to tell you the fifth one.
Okay, come on, get us to the fifth.
So we got dosing ratios. The fifth one is the wild card, the individual metabolism.
Right.
If two people walk into a Chinese herbalist or any herbalist and they both have migraines, they're going to walk out with completely different concoctions of herbs. So this is why dosing and ratios are an art and a science, because every individual reacts and responds differently.
How do you tell? Now the Chinese guy's going to take your pulse or do something.
That's how
so
they
do
do
you
it.
tell?
We go through history. We go through. We talk to them. We go off of what's worked with other patients anecdotally. We look at their what are they taking.
This is a
now.
consultation you're doing with the patient,
Right.
a really one-on-one
We spend
situation.
45 minutes with every new patient, minimally.
Right,
you know, you have to find out as much as you can.
Right.
You have to match it up with what research we've done from things like O'Shaughnessy's and all the patients that we've been working with. And we're just at the beginning, infant stages, but we still have a lot of information at hand, you know, and it's working.
Right,
You
exactly.
cannot argue with
Right,
success. My most recent, and you'll see this in the video, Leela, 79-year-old with a huge tumor in the lower right quadrant of her lung. And she did 3 months of chemo and radiation, and it just kept growing. So she went exclusively to cannabis. Got rid of that tumor entirely.
Really?
Gone. So I have so many stories like that.
And that was by taking this thick oil, basically. Was that the major thing?
Yeah. And
So what is now the absolute best way? But there isn't. It's whatever disease,
isn't,
whatever
that's what she's
condition
saying.
has a best
the
way.
ratio and the dosing changes. The delivery system should always be through the oral mucosa, but you do what you can do. If people won't do that.
But I'm thinking about Ayurvedic medicine.
Yeah.
Right, in medicine of India, right?
Right.
And they have all these different medical formulas based on, say, let's for example say 150 herbs.
Yeah.
One of those herbs is cannabis,
Right.
and always has been. But how you mix it in ratio with those other herbs tells you whether it's energizing or relaxing or meditative
Absolutely.
or stimulating.
I mean,
whatever,
people
right?
don't even know it's not.
But with Ayurvedic medicine, one of the key things is how is it delivered?
Yes.
Is it in an oil? Is it in milk?
Oil,
Is it
I have
in
to tell you
water?
about that.
All right,
Yeah,
that's why I was leading. I was trying to get you back to the oil.
Yeah,
Okay, tell us about the oil.
Okay, so obviously the best herbal medicine is the one that you'll actually take. But the problem with oil-based medicines, and we learned this in the 19th century pharmacopoeia, when the pharmacies in the 1800s had cannabis indica, cannabis sativa on the shelves.
right.
And naturopaths and herbalists have been known this forever. Alcohol is the best medium to convey your medicine because it's the most absorbable.
Through the mouth.
3 problems. Well, anyhow,
okay,
yeah. But I mean, that's what we're doing with cannabis. Yeah, the delivery systems are swishing through the mouth. But here's the 3 problems with oil. It tends to separate from the medicine, so manufacturers have to put emulsifiers in there to get the molecules to bind better.
I see.
They're overcoming that somewhat, absolutely. Number 2, oil is a food product, so you have a slight chance of microbials. If your medicine has anything less than 35% alcohol in it, you have a chance of microbials growing. But here's the most important reason, number 3. Oil has a harder time passing through the blood-brain barrier. A lot of our receptor centers in the brain, they're in the brain, or in getting that medicine to where it needs to go to get engaged by the endocannabinoid system. It's tougher with oil than with alcohol. Now, some people will not tolerate alcohol, little children, but I always figure out a way around it. You mix it a little bit with water or with juice or something. Figure out a way around it. But if all you want to do is take oil, take it. You'll just have to take more.
But what about glycerin?
It's the same problem. It's glycerin's not a good conveyor.
Right, I see. And I've heard vinegar does something where it kind of neutralizes various things, if tinctures in vinegar or what.
It's hard for me to imagine that it would really neutralize the effect of cannabinoids because you're talking on a real chemical level.
Right, but various people have said anecdotally that it doesn't get the effect if you do vinegar instead of alcohol tincture.
I don't know about
anyway,
that.
we really got to wrap this up because
This is a
you
shame.
know
we didn't even get to the politics of medical cannabis.
No, because we've been working with Jude for over 3 years, helping people in Mendocino County get organized politically and so on. And she's a dynamo, a workhorse, and she's one of the people who does what she says she's going to do, and that's
Yeah,
always
you like
really
that kind of
counts in
person.
anything like this. So thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Swami. Thank you
And-
very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Ricky.
And and what's the
Gem.
name of the movie you did again?
Cannabis is medicine changing the narrative.
And then it's Bhutan Medicines.
Yes.
Well, that's what Bhutan, like the country,
Right,
Bhutan. And don't forget to tune in every other Wednesday night at 6 p.m. on MendocinoTV.com for my TV show, Cannabis News and Views.
Okay. And Dragonfly Medicine in Fort Bragg.
Yep.
So, thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank
to-
you very
and
much.
see you next time.
Yep.